Listen to that. Cicadas.
Birds.
Even a vehicle in the very distant background. It's June 24, 2020. 2020. 2020.
What a crazy year.
What a crazy year. What a crazy year. Absolutely crazy year. Absolutely crazy year.
Absolutely crazy year.
Everybody agrees on that. The memes agree on that. Everybody does. Agrees it's a different year. Of course, my dear.
It's a leap year.
Those are some of the craziest years. I pulled up the other day out on, in a browser, I realized like a Chrome browser on a computer, did a search for leap years. And you could set the date, like from what years to what years. So I did from like
1971 until now.
Most have been alive more leap years than I care to talk about. But then again, I don't remember the exact amount. Maybe it was 13 of them, 12 of them, whatever it was. So it's a leap year, and that's always crazy enough. Of course, any year that you throw in a
pandemic,
people that are basically under house arrest.
2 or 3 months.
Masses of people.
Not just one or two. We've seen the movies. There was a guy that had to stay on his property for however long. I mean, it drives you absolutely crazy. I guess. I've not been able to do it. I did not get to experience the quarantine. So it wasn't as real for me as it was for others. But for the people impacted, it must have been pretty hard. Witnessed lots and lots of complaining about the quarantine. Of course, with my mind and the way that I exist, I'm like, yeah, bring on the quarantine.
Come here to the quarantine.
Daddy.
Water daddy.
Quarantine.
So I didn't get to experience that. Not yet. Not yet. But all of that kind of balled up.
Stack electricity.
Collected in one place. And then now we have this eruption. And of course, it's not unfounded. It's not just, and I say that
Unfounded.
I mean, it's a little bit deeper than that. I'm not just throwing it off cursory, but what I'm saying is that the reason why it's wider spread and more people are talking about the protests in a more positive light, because specifically people of color and people in poverty and people that may have mental illnesses can tell you that it is pretty obvious that there needs to be reform in the policing and judicial
industries.
And I say industries because it's a money racket, and there are lots of people that have problems in our current environment of law, of written law, and of case law. And what happens is that if you interface with that particular system,
industries,
and even more specifically within particular components of that system, that is within certain areas and at certain
times,
because it's a wave, it comes and goes, whoever's in power can have impact on it. If you look, there's statistics to back me up on this. There's been a huge
increase
in people with major convictions, charges and convictions in the past 20 years. Now, violent crime is down. So, some people say, well, that's just a consequence of it. But I think that what people are protesting is that the net was thrown too wide and it was too discriminatory. In other words, it was very biased. It was a very thorough.
Another way to look at it
was that it was a very thorough net. It caught a lot of people. And, we're talking already with a job situation that's scary, untenable at best. It's hard to find a job. There's, so many people on layoff because of the cycle of work. I mean, there wasn't anything going on in certain industries. And a lot of these industries are restaurants and other service organizations, local deliveries, and the ones that are impacted by COVID-19. A lot of these jobs don't require criminal background screens. Some of them do now, but that's where people that have challenges can go to get jobs. So when you have a situation to where you have voluminous laws resulting in voluminous charges and convictions on people of color and people in poverty, and people with specific mental challenges, you have yourself a mess.
And it's been brewing for a while.
Been a wide net thrown. There's been a very tight net thrown, and of course, you know, even in small rural areas, as where I reside, there are lots of people with felonies.
Lots of people.
With felonies, and of course, you happen upon people in the 70s and 80s, and someone was a convict. They had really done something wrong. You know, it was a different world. Had people, I'm sure, you know, that were convicted unjustly, but you had to be pretty bad, at least where I grew up, to have a felony. But that changed in the late 90s. There'd been so much violence in America that people just had to change, apparently. And of course, in true American style, we don't just do something halfway. It's either
All or nothing.
and when you have a feeling of all or nothing,
You don't have anything to lose.
so it's whatever happens, happens. You're already blocked out of the system. Sorry to tell you, dude, things are about to erupt. And it's happening now. If it's the real deal, if people are going to keep pushing it, it's going to be left open. But it's going to change some. I think that
The idea of defunding the police is absolutely insane.
when I heard the response, that is, if someone called in need for help, you know, you're going to send out a bunch of, or a psychologist or social worker. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing to do, but I would send them in addition to police or somebody that has training to deal with physical
Violence.
and people with mental challenges, because that's what you may come across. People with nothing to lose, people with an addiction issue, and people that don't really have no reason whatsoever to continue living. They can't get a job, they can't support their family, so they need
Hope.
And if a social worker will bring that, well, that's just absolutely great. But to protect people, it's a fine balance. I mean, I don't know the answer to this. It's really weird. If you trying to articulate how to describe such a complex issue, it's something that you really can't do in a very quick audio. You need lots of times, minds put together, working hard, negotiating, figuring out
A path forward.
to get this done. You got to figure out how to take care of the people in your community.
Community. All people in your community.
Again, as human beings, kind of wave back and forth. Everything is so politically dynamic now as well. It's kind of like in the extremes, which is kind of where everything is. We're at the very far reaches of the pendulum swing, and we're not in the middle right now. I mean, we may have been there 30 years ago or so, but we're not there now. I mean, there's a bunch of different pendulums. There's some of them that we're in the middle of, I'm sure, but I think very dynamically like that, in that there are a bunch of different variables going on, and some of the variables we may be in the middle on.
Which gives me hope.
Of course, other parts of the pendulums, the many different facets of organic life, are in the extremes, and that's what's causing our problems right now. And you have people trying to describe those things in terms of, you know, supernatural forces. I can't really speak to that because I'm a very practical person. I like boots on the ground.
I was raised by a military guy.
To me, the way I was raised, the way I grew up, the way that I view the world, the way you fix a problem is that you go to it and you deal with it. You knock on its door and you try to understand what's going on with it. And then if it acts violent with you, well, then you have to get out of its way. And if it continues to come after you,
You gotta take care of it.
I'm going to do everything I can to give it the opportunity to do what it needs to do. But when it starts taking punches,
It's time for it to be shut down.
so that's the way I look at the world. Boots on the ground kind of guy. You got to get out there and stir around and mix, which is kind of hard to do in COVID-19 year in 2020. I remember some of my first memories. Well, actually, I remember some of my last memories of what I would consider sane life. The day after Valentine's Day, February the 15th, we were in Monroe, Louisiana at
A Mardi Gras parade.
and were with friends and met new friends and received beads from hundreds of people, them touching it,
And everybody laughing and smiling and not knowing.
what was about to happen, not knowing the big changes that were about to come for our daily lives, not knowing about,
COVID-19.
or not understanding it anyway, we may have heard of it, being what it meant to be in quarantine and what it meant to be scared of something invisible,
Some invisible force.
to really be scared of it. in a way that we've never been scared of an invisible force before. But I don't think that it's been a bad thing. I think that we need to understand those invisible forces.
Those pendulum swings.
I think that we have a tendency to live in the extremes in other ways, and that we just bury ourselves in with electronics and television and entertainment that's meant toward other people entertaining us and
Us being passive.
But what I see now
In the post-COVID-19 experience of the world.
is people fishing and kayaking and hiking and being out in nature, socially distanced from other people, and the
Constant rattle of worries out loud.
escaping the constant rattling, perpetuation of worries out loud drive us absolutely crazy. So I think that we saw that we have to turn the TV off, put boots on the ground, and go see what's going on. I bet it'll fix a lot of our problems.
Boots on the ground, baby.
Boots on the ground. Over now.